In Costa Rica, the Supreme Court of Elections announced a ban of all electoral propaganda as of this Thursday, ahead of the second round of elections in the Central American country. Russia established a rule requiring countries that impose sanctions to cancel the sale of Russian natural gas in rubles. Palestinian media reported the killing of 3 young Palestinian men by Israeli forces in the occupied West Bank on Thursday. Hi, this is From the South. I am your news anchor, Dio Martin, from the TeleSUR studios in Havana. We begin with the news. In Costa Rica, the Supreme Court of Elections announced that as of this Thursday, the broadcasting of electoral propaganda, including polls related to the event, will be prohibited. Authorities indicated that according to Article 136 of the Electoral Code, the publication of paid advertisements in the written press, radio, television, and in the Internet is prohibited. In this context, they also warned that any individual who breaches the law will sustain a financial sentence that could range from 2 to 50 base salaries. At the same time, the court urged the public not to give any credit during the period of the ban to any advance results or counts that do not come from the official institution. And El Salvador's gang leaders and their followers will face prison sentences ranging from 20 to 45 years under legal reforms passed by Congress in the wake of 89 registered murders by groups like the Mara Salvatrucha over the weekend. President Nayib Bukele's administration invoked emergency powers on Sunday to temporarily suspend or restrict some constitutional protections like freedom of assembly after 62 murders on Saturday alone. Security and human rights experts said it was the most murders reported in one day in a country with no ongoing situation of war so far this century. In a follow-up action, members of Bukele's ruling party pushed through substantial increases in prison sentences. Convicted gang leaders will now be sentenced to 40 to 45 years in jail, compared with 6 to 9 years previously, while other gang members will be sentenced to 20 to 30 years, up from 3 to 5 years earlier.
From now on, being a member of a terrorist group will be considered a crime, and they will get an exemplary sentence. We won't tolerate more abuses from these criminal groups.
The United Nations organization revealed that in the first months of 2022, more than 274,000 people in Colombia have been affected by armed violence, an increase of 621% compared to the same period back in 2021. In the midst of the presidential election campaign and the health emergency caused by the coronavirus pandemic, the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reported that violence in Colombia continues to be even more critical. The organization warned that clashes between armed and criminal groups have prompted the internal displacement of at least 13,000 Colombians this year. It is worth mentioning that in January of 2022 alone, authorities and social organizations registered 25 mass displacement emergencies with more than 12,000 people, including farmers, forced to leave their territories, while in February 11 cases were reported. Left-wing leaders from across Latin America met in Rio de Janeiro on Wednesday with former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Organized by the Puebla Group and the State University of Rio de Janeiro, the event, known as International Meeting for Democracy and Equality, discussed new models of development committed to social justice and solidarity among Latin American countries. The Puebla Group refers to themselves as a progressive force of left-wing Latin American political leaders who seek to be a counterweight to the right-wing governments and leaders of the region. Among those attending the event were several of the main leaders of the Puebla Group, such as former Spanish Prime Minister José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero, former Colombian President Ernesto Samper, Spain's second Vice President and Minister of Labor Yolanda Díaz, and the President of Mexico's ruling party, Movement for National Regeneration, or Morena, Mario Delgado.
All Latin American countries found in Dilma Rousseff and in Lula's government, with the assistance of Celso Amorim, former foreign minister and defense minister in Lula's and Dilma's government, a protection of sovereignty in the face of the hegemonic attempts to intervene in our countries. That is why we want you to come back, Lula. We could create in South America a conscience of a political bloc to think about economy, trade, education, and culture. This is the goal of South America.
In Guatemala, human rights organizations and indigenous movements demanded an end to the persecution of judges and prosecutors after Judge Rica recently went into exile.
Before the courthouse, the deterioration of the judiciary in the face of the persecution of judges and prosecutors who are in charge of cases of corruption and human rights violations.
We want to express our indignation at the deterioration of the rule of law as manifested in the persecution of independent judges such as Erika Aifan, Pablo Zitumul, and other judges.
They point out that the judicial body is currently collapsed by a corrupt pact which has the support of the administration of Alejandro Yamatei.
The justice system is a failure in Guatemala. The justice system here is corrupt. It says there, balance and administration of justice, and justice is only in favor of the corrupt, the scoundrels, the thief, those who have plundered and impoverished the people.
They also demanded the exclusion of Consuelo Porras, the current Attorney General of the Public Ministry, from the process of electing a new prosecutor.
We are here to tell the commissioners that their duty to Guatemala is to exclude her, and the others we have pointed out as unfit to continue in the process.
The social leaders stress the lack of suitable people in the justice system, claiming that it represents a setback for the country.
It is in danger if it is filled with judges and magistrates who do not act on the basis of the law or justice or respect for human rights. The danger is that in Guatemala we will return to the 60s, where there was no respect for life, human rights, or anything else.
The organizations have announced a peaceful demonstration on April 6 to express their disagreement with the course of justice in the country.
Rolanda Garcia, TeleSUR, Guatemala.
We're going to take a short break now. Please join us again after this. Hi, and welcome back to Rubles. President that imposed sanctions on Russia to open an account in rubles in Russian banks to purchase Russian natural gas from 1st of April, and stressed that failure to make payment in the local currency will be considered a default by buyers. He also said that current contracts will be suspended if customers refuse to comply with the requirement to make payments in rubles.
Today, I signed a decree that establishes the rules for trading Russian natural gas with so-called unfriendly states. We offer counterparties from such countries a clear and transparent scheme. In order to purchase Russian natural gas, they must open ruble accounts in Russian banks. It is from these accounts that gas payments will be made.
In response, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that Western countries would continue to pay for Russian gas in euros or US dollars.
We have looked at the contracts for gas supplies and other supplies. It says the payment is made in euros, sometimes dollars, but usually in euros. And I made it clear in the conversation with the Russian president that that will remain the case. And what his ideas are that this can happen is what we will now look at in detail. But in any case, what applies to the companies is that they want to, can, and will pay in euros.
Indian authorities agreed to set new payment mechanisms for trade with Russia to enable existing trade obligations in the wake of sanctions imposed on the Kremlin, a move that will also pave the way for cheaper oil imports to meet the southern Asian country's energy demands. In the past month, as sanctions amount on Russia, the scope of a payment mechanism in local currencies has expanded from being a means to sustain ongoing trade to possibilities of deeper engagement, including increasing bilateral trade. For the mechanism to be implemented, Indian importers would pay for the goods to the accounts of Russian banks in India, and these financial outlets in turn would make the payment in rubles to the Russian exporters. The new mechanism will open up an opportunity for manufacturers of agricultural machinery, medicine, furniture, and bathroom fittings, among other goods, who are looking for new markets. Russia announced the opening of a new humanitarian crossing point from Mariupol to Kiev-controlled areas. Russian forces pledged to open a new humanitarian passage starting Thursday from the besieged city of Mariupol on the Sea of Azov coast to the Kiev-controlled Zaporozhye region, announced to the head of Russia's National Defense Management Center, General Colonel Mikhail Misintsev. The Russian armed forces, exclusively for humanitarian purposes, from 10 a.m. on March 31st, 2022, declared a ceasefire and opened an additional humanitarian corridor for the evacuation of civilians and foreign citizens from Mariupol to Zaporozhye, Misintsev informed in a press conference. The Colonel General noted that the evacuation will take place via the town of Berdyansk, 66 kilometers west of Mariupol, also on the coast of the Sea of Azov. The Russian Defense Ministry's chief spokesman, Major General Igor Konashenko, said on Thursday that Russian cruise missiles destroyed a number of major Ukrainian fuel depots.
On the evening of March 30, high-precision air-launched cruise missiles destroyed large fuel depots in the settlements of Dnipro, Lysychansk, Shushuiv, and Novomoskov, from which fuel was being supplied to Ukrainian troops in the Donbass. During the night, Operation Tactical and unmanned aircraft hit 52 military facilities of Ukraine, among them 4 command posts, 1 S-300 air defense missile system south of Izyum settlement, and 1 Buk M1 in the area of Kudakov, 2 rocket launchers, 1 missile and artillery ammunition depot, 2 fuel depots, and 38 strongholds and areas of concentration of military equipment.
The President of the Republic of South Ossetia, Anatoly Bibilov, announced that he will initiate legal proceedings to become part of Russia, which he calls homeland. President Bibilov announced that a referendum will be held to that effect. The announcement sparked celebrations in Tikhonvili, the capital of South Ossetia, including a motorcade through the center of the city. On his behalf, the Speaker of the Abkhazian Parliament, Valery Kvarchia, said Russia is a strategic partner of the Republic, but Abkhazia does not plan to be part of the Russian Federation. Ossetia was part of the former Soviet Union. After its dissolution, it remained in conflict with Georgia until declaring itself independent in 1991. Now, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the United States has never honored its commitments or turned words into deeds in dealing with global affairs, which has been proved by abundant evidences and facts. Lavrov made the remarks in response to the skeptical remarks from the United States President Joe Biden and Secretary of State Antony Blinken following Russia's announcement to reduce military activities in Ukraine. The Russian Defense Ministry has decided to significantly reduce military activity in Kyiv and Chernihiv directions. Deputy Defense Minister Alexander Fomin made the announcement on Tuesday following the new round of Moscow-Kyiv peace talks in Istanbul, Turkey. The Russian delegation described the negotiations as constructive, though clear differences remain between the two sides on various key issues. Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu said the meeting was the most meaningful since the start of the negotiations.
I cannot think of or fantasize for U.S. President Joe Biden, just as I cannot fantasize for Secretary of State Antony Blinken. If we talk about those whose words differ from their deeds, then there are too many examples when the United States said one thing and did something completely different. I don't even want to list them here.
Ministers from China, Pakistan, Iran, Russia, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan exchanged ideas on the situation in Afghanistan and took measures to enhance cooperation among neighboring countries. The ministers exchanged ideas and coordinated positions on the Afghan issue at the third foreign ministers' meeting among the neighboring countries of Afghanistan in the ancient town of Tunji, East China's Anhui province. Chinese State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi chaired the meeting, noting Afghanistan still faces multiple difficulties, including humanitarian, economic, and security challenges, and that there is still a long way to go for the South Asian nation to achieve lasting peace and sustainable development. In a video message to the meeting, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged the international community to work together to address the needs of the Afghan people.
I'm very happy that this platform is becoming more meaningful. China is playing a very important effort, and I think China is going to play a very critical role in promoting economic development of Afghanistan, in expanding CPEC to Afghanistan, and developing Afghanistan's infrastructure.
We have more news coming up after a final short break. Please stay with us. Hi and welcome back. 2 young Palestinian men were killed and several resulted injured during a crackdown by the Israeli army in the occupied West Bank city of Jenin. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, Sanad Abu Atiyah, 17 of age, and Yazid Saadi, 23, died after arriving at the hospital, and on Thursday morning, relatives and loved ones of the victims bid farewell to their remains. Also, 3 other young men remain in critical condition due to injuries sustained during the Israeli army raid. A total of 15 people sustained injuries during the operation, 14 of whom were hit by live bullets. The attack on the Palestinian neighborhood came 24 hours after a Palestinian resident of the city of Yabad near Jenin shot and killed 4 Israeli soldiers in a shooting in the Bnei Brak neighborhood of Tel Aviv. Forces killed the 3rd Palestinian man in the last few hours. Palestinian news agency Wafa reported the event. The outlet informs that the young man's name is Nidal Juma Jafra, a 30-year-old resident of the town of Tarukmiya in the Hebron district. According to Wafa, Israeli media claimed that Jafra was shot down after he stabbed and seriously injured an Israeli settler on a bus near the settlement block. The circumstances surrounding the stabbing attempt remain unclear. Tunisia's President Kais Saied announced on Wednesday the dissolution of parliament, 8 months after suspending it to give his office full powers in July 2021. Saied made this announcement after deputies organized a virtual session of parliament despite its suspension, in which they voted to annul the exceptional measures decided by the president.
Based on Article 72 of the Constitution, I announce today at this historic moment the dissolution of parliament in order to preserve the state and preserve its institution.
The Tunisian president described the legislative session as a conspiracy and a failed coup attempt. The deputies had called for early legislative and presidential elections to overcome the political and socio-economic crisis in the country.
The meeting of people's representatives is a failed coup attempt and a conspiracy against the internal and external security of the state, and they will be criminally prosecuted.
On Wednesday, the new Prime Minister of Portugal, Antonio Costa, inaugurated the new cabinet that will be in office until October 2026. This is the 3rd time Costa is chosen as Prime Minister. The new cabinet takes office 2 months after the victory of the Socialist Party in the legislative elections. The electoral win gave them more than half of the seats in Parliament, but the Prime Minister said this does not mean having absolute power, rather absolute responsibility. Costa's new cabinet is smaller than the previous one, with 17 ministers, of which 9 are women and 8 men, making it the first one with somewhat parity at this level.
Portuguese citizens choose not to keep what there was, but to change, and change by giving the governing party this time an absolute majority, thus saying they provided with exceptional conditions, without excuses or alibis, to be able to do what has to be done. We have proven ourselves. We have turned the page on austerity. We are turning the page on the pandemic. We are turning the page on war.
China reported more than 1,000 new locally transmitted COVID-19 cases and 36 imported ones on Wednesday, the National Health Commission said in its daily report on Thursday. The provinces, autonomous regions, and municipalities where new local cases were reported include more than 1,000 in Jilin and 355 in Shanghai, while other locations like Heilongjiang and Henan with lower figures report between 19 and 15. Among the new local cases, 56 asymptomatic individuals tested positive for coronavirus. According to the daily bulletin, of the total reported, 36 were imported cases. As of Wednesday, the mainland had registered nearly 150,000 COVID-19 cases, of which 116,000 had recovered, and nearly 5,000 people had died. A new UNICEF report forecasts many school children are at risk of dropping out due to the pandemic's impact after 3 years. According to UNICEF, as the COVID-19 pandemic enters its third year, 23 countries are yet to fully open schools, but many pupils are at risk of dropping out. After comparing pre-pandemic and post-pandemic learning levels, the report points out that 147 million children missed more than half of their in-person schooling over the past 2 years. On top of that, there is evidence that many children did not return to school when their classrooms reopened, as for instance in Liberia, about 43% of students in public schools never went back to on-site learning in December 2020. 48% dropped out in Malawi, with girls being the most affected. The evidence also points Africa as a continent that suffered the most cases of scholar desertion. With that, we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at TeleSUR English. You can also join us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I am Dio Martin. Thanks for watching.